Let's see what did we add under buildSrc folder. Hello everyone, this is Reza. Welcome to the Mentor Code Lab. In previous episode, we started writing our build.gradle, and then we found that we forgot few files under special folders. We just copy pasted them, and at the end, this minimalistic build.gradle had synced. However, as I suggested, we will start taking a look at buildSrc in this video. Now, buildSrc is a special folder. It tells the system that whatever I'm having is related to how you should build your product, and I'm not including myself in the finished product. Okay, so it has a build.gradle. It's really nothing special. It just has the check style plugin and the spotless plugin, then addresses Maven Central to download these two plugins from there. Then it will set the check style using our XAML file that we took a look at the very first video, I think, and assigns this version for the plugin to be used. Then we have the spotless. It says the line ending, so we want to end the lines of each file using the Unix code. And whenever we are working with Java, please use this license file in the top root as header file, and it will be injected on the top of each file, so we don't need to manually go on and inject our own headers from now on. Then any unused imports will be removed, and here is the funny part. It will reorder the imports. First Java, then Java X, then Net Minecraft, and then Fabric. Then it says indent with tabs. However, it's crossed over and it says it's deprecated. However, it's not telling what is being used instead. So it's still there. We can use it right now. And says trim trailing white spaces. So if we have empty white space at the end of the line, it will trim all of that and delete it. And that's the whole build.gradle for the buildSrc. Now let's take a look at the classes. The abstract get value source. This is an abstract class that extends value source parameters and implements value sources. Basically, it has a method called get execution operations actually. So it returns execution operations, and then a get method that returns a string. It accepts an array of arguments as a strings. So it says output stream equals to new byte array output stream. Then it asks for a result from this method call. On this method call result, that is execution operations, it executes a specialty as a lambda that says command line is get. Then these are arguments that we passed in, and the standard output is our output stream. Finally, we are asserting that we executed normally and exited out of the command normally, so we didn't error it out. And then we get this output stream, we convert it to a string, and we trim it and we return it as a string. Okay, and the get hash value source is again another abstract class that extends abstract get value source. Remember, that was the previous class with the string and get hash value source dot parameters. So here we define an interface called parameters, extends the value source parameters, and it has one method called get directory that returns property of a string. Then we have a method called obtain, and here we return the get method call from our previous abstract class. And here as arguments we say log -1 format as %h, and then the parameters that we have here for the directories that get. Okay, a little bit complex, but nothing crazy. Then the get branch value source, the one that we are working with it right now. Remember, the other ones will be used later. Here we say that we are again extending that abstract original class, and value source parameters are none. Here we just say that, hey, from get, we want to call these arguments rev parse abb rev reference as head. This returns the head branch for us. And actually, one of the suggestions that ChatGPT had for me when I encountered this error in here was that instead of reading the branches like this, you can use the same thing. And the command was get rev -parse -abb rev -ref capital word head. And as you see, these are exactly the three params that we are sending back here. So basically in this class, we are saying that, hey, execute this command on get, and whatever is the result, return it back. Okay, so the result was that main name from git branch. Those are the contents of our buildSrc. Although they are abstract classes, as you see, we can execute them in the build.gradle. Now, let's take a look at our Gradle Gradle folder, because we have some things there, the very first thing I need to mention is that the way Fabric API is handling Java docs is a little bit different. Normally, when we are building a project, even if it has modules, we will let the Java doc be generated for each module separately. What they had done in Fabric API is called fat Java doc. In other words, they restrict generation of Java docs per project. They will collect all these submodule Java docs in one place and inject them inside one final big fat Java doc. To do that, they need to get access inside a method that is not public. As you see, they have an access widener here. javadoc.accessWidener. Of course, it's not being used right now. So inside our build.gradle, we didn't add this access widener yet, but remember, we will add it. So as you see, we are making a method accessible for recipe provider and then another one for stack visibility. But funny enough, both of them are for Minecraft. For some reason, Fabric API was making Java docs on recipe generator and the stack visibility. Do we need them? No, we don't need them. So I will comment these. However, it raises a question. Do we need to add any access widener that we have on subprojects here? Honestly, I don't think so, because I think there will be tons of access wideners inside Fabric API, and you don't see them here. For some reason, they had to add these two access wideners under the Gradle folder. We will see if we need them anytime later, but I assume not. So that's the access widener. The next one is this focus.java. As you see, it's just some pattern definitions, and then the main is used for focused.txt. That is why we need to double check these things. As you see, basically it says delete if exists. So if the file exists, delete it. I wonder, it may be deleted after. Let's put the dot back there so that at least as a reference, I have a copy. And then it's resetting the focus. This happens when it's focusing on something. I think it will happen automatically. I'm not sure. Maybe at some point we will add it as a task to Gradle. However, basically when this class is being called, the main will happen. It's a normal Java class that is executable. It will remove this file and then sets dependencies. And here's the thing, read dependencies for game test, client game test, and registry sync. Well, we don't have these projects, but here's something. It says all modules depend on the following modules. So if we have a module that everything is depending on it, we have to add it here. Of course, we will have a module that is like so, and that is core. So instead of these, we will have glibs-core. This is a module that every other module in the library will depend upon. It's a general dependency. We don't need to add the core inside our focus text from now on to work on other things. It says focusing on something and then writing something and then the reading dependencies. If the dependency contains the current project, then return. Basically, a project can't depend on itself. Then we add the project to our dependency. We create a path for the build.gradle, and then we check if the file does not exist. Then we don't have the build.gradle error out. We read the content of the build.gradle path, build.gradle actually, and then we say outer matcher, outer pattern matcher. Outer pattern is this pattern that we said, module dependencies or test dependencies with S and everything else. And we will see how this works later. It's a really neat trick actually. And then we say if we found a match for the outer, then we want to find a match for inner, and the outer match is the group one. Okay, so on the first group, do an inner match. Inner match is just looking for one of these patterns. Okay, and then at that time, as long as we find this pattern, please find the first group, replace the colon with nothing, and add it as a dependency with this dependency on the dependencies group. Okay, so we are recursively calling ourselves. Okay, now how does that work? I will not dive into this thing, but let's take a look at the block, for example. Hopefully it has something like that. No, I had seen some of these that has that type of thing. Here we go. You see, the thing that we wanted to find, the outer pattern, it says module dependencies or test dependencies. We have it, module dependencies. Okay, module dependencies on the project, and then each line contains one of the modules that we are depending on. So for example, this API lookup API is depending on the base and lifecycle events. If we are testing it, we have extra dependencies that we can use. And basically this focus Java task is just reading the build.gradle, finding this block, and then adding each one of these as a dependency for this project. So it will load them, okay? And remember, we already said that every single one of our projects is depending on core. So we don't need to add this inside each and every one of our projects. This was focus.java. Now, for other Gradle files, I will stop the video here and I will come back and look at them in another video because each one of them needs a little bit of explanation. Have fun, everyone. Bye.